Misfits, Midtown, Misfits, Midtown, Misfits, Midtown, Misfits.
Hey.
Hi.
Hello. Welcome back, Misfits, and welcome back to a new episode. Today, we're keeping it going and we're doing another singleton.
Another singleton. That's right. Just something else we want to talk about that's not a series.
Yep, pretty much. And it could become a series at any time.
It could be, honestly.
But no, we're doing a singleton. We're sticking to what we said. But yeah, today we're doing something. This is going to be interesting because this is just something different. We're going to talk about the Psalms.
Right. Just the Psalms, the book that you see in the Bible.
Yeah, all of them. Psalms, plural. And it occurred to us, it actually occurred to me while we were like working on the episode. Because for some reason, I was like, oh, this is the only episode we've done about the Psalms. And then as I was like, we were drafting the episode and I got like towards the end or whatever, I was like, wait, we talked about the Hallel Psalms.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that one was a very specific episode about specific Psalms. And so we wanted to dive a little deeper and get a little teachy with more general information about the Psalms because I think that the Psalms are very popular.
Yes.
People talk about them. People preach about them. They talk mostly about David and all of his emotions and all of the things that he was going through at the time. But I don't think that people, other than like it being raw emotion and songs and stuff like that, I don't think I've heard anything really like super teachy about it. Have you?
No, I don't think so. I mean, Psalms are referenced. You've heard them. I think they're probably some of the more quotable ones aside from like the Gospels. So, but yeah, no, I don't think I've heard them like in more of a teaching kind of way. So,
yeah, so that's why we're here. Yeah, no, we're excited. We're excited because we learned a lot. And as always, the Holy Spirit is going to show us so much more stuff.
We learned new words.
We did. I just learned so many things that I had no idea about. So I'm saying that like that doesn't happen every week. But I get excited every week, so it's fine.
But yeah. But yeah, we just felt like Psalms are just, like you hear about them all the time. We use them all the time. I feel like we reference them as far as like if you're new to the Bible and stuff, like read Psalms. And it's like, we've never actually talked about Psalms like as a whole. So yeah, just thought we'd put one together and learn ourselves and then share that with y'all.
Yeah, so we're excited. We're excited to get into the Psalms. So let's do it. Let's get teachy.
Yeah.
So the Psalms of the Bible are a part of what's considered the poetry section, or also the wisdom literature, which includes Job, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Songs, aka also known as Song of Solomon. I really like when people say wisdom literature because it's like, ooh, what's that?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, we're just talking about this segment of the Bible. It's like, oh, I see.
Yeah.
But it sounds so fancy.
Right. It's these 5 books, but, wisdom literature sounds
like wisdom good. Where are you reading right now in the Bible, the wisdom literature?
I'm in the wisdom literature right now.
So you're in Proverbs.
Like, basically, I just read Job.
But it's really cool because I think something that we want to just like harp on here is that typically when you hear wisdom literature, I think a lot of people only talk about Proverbs.
Yeah.
Because of course, yes, it is wisdom. Like there's literally so much information. It's like, do this, don't do that.
Mm-hmm. And just references to wisdom within the book that a lot of people just kind of attribute that to Proverbs. But yeah, there's more than one.
Exactly. There's so much more. So again, it's Job. In addition to the Psalms, of course.
Yes.
Job, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Songs, aka Song of Solomon. Something that I want to say, and we learned this because we watched the same sermon, but this was Bianca Olthoff. Yes. Yes, Olthoff. So she was explaining, she did like a whole sermon series on Song of Songs, or Song of Solomon. And it was great. And because she's so extra, it's amazing. But she was saying that, and this is just like a teaching moment if you didn't know, but Song of Songs is like when Jesus is referred to King of Kings. So it's essentially saying like, this is the best song like ever written.
Of all the songs.
Or yeah, of all the songs, like this is the best song.
Yeah.
Or like Jesus, he's the King of Kings. He's like the king above every king. And I thought that was so cool when she said that. I was like, oh, gasp, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Like I didn't even know that some Bibles said Song of Solomon and some said Song of Songs.
Yeah.
So that shows you what I know.
So if you didn't know that, you're also learning that today.
Exactly. But back to the Psalms.
Yeah.
So when discussing the Psalms, there are two titles. One we know, which is Psalms, and then one we're not so familiar with, Psalter, right? Everybody say it with me. This is our new word, Psalter.
Yeah. Psalter. Please tell us more.
Yes, and this Psalter has a P in front of it, so Psalter.
Like Psalms, it has a P in the front. Yeah.
Like Psalms. Like Psalms, it's Psalter.
Psalter. It's a good way to put it.
Yes. So these titles come from the Septuagint, which we know as the Greek translation of the Old Testament. And so we learned about these two titles as we're like preparing for this episode. And y'all can't imagine the rabbit hole we had to go into to find the meanings of these words, to separate and define them. Because as we were reading and researching, we did not understand, because they said Psalms or Psalter, but they kept using them in these articles as interchangeable.
As if we knew.
And we're like, that doesn't make sense. I don't know what this is. What is the Psalter?
I know what one is. What's the other?
Don't tell me. Don't give me information as if I know it already. Define it.
I'm not familiar. Yeah, exactly.
Be teachy, please.
So there we go, trying to find more information to be teaching.
Exactly. So it was very frustrating, but we overcame the frustration.
Yes.
And found out for ourselves. So now we understand. So now we can explain it to you, because before we did not understand.
We just read them. We're like, okay, please expand. And they did not.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, if we just read this to people, they won't know what we're talking about.
I mean, we'll be confused reading it because we're like, we don't even know. So we needed to find out first before we could proceed.
That's one of the episodes where it's like, I hope no one asks questions.
Yeah. It's like, please don't ask anything.
Please don't comment on this episode. I don't know what to say.
So we're like, yeah, let's not let that happen. Let's look it up before we share.
No, the Misfits would never do that. And so we're here with the info. Okay, so Psalms and Psalter, right?
Yeah.
So since we know these words have Greek origins, then of course they must stem from something or have some sort of root word,
right?
From the Greek language, right? And we learned all about the Greek language or the alphabet last episode.
That's true. So it's kind of connected.
Yes, and if you haven't heard that, please go do. So you can find out what we're talking about. How Greek is math also. That will make sense if you listen to that episode. Yeah, go back and then come back. So the word psalm comes from the Greek word psalmos, literally meaning twanging of a harp. So it's referring to the sound that a harp makes, right? The twanging, which sounds so country.
Yes.
But it's so psalmos is the root word for psalm, which means the twanging of a harp. The really cool thing too is that salmos is how you say it in Spanish. And I just thought that was awesome. Yeah.
Just without the P, but yeah.
Exactly.
The sound is, the pronunciation is the same.
Yes. So that was the psalm. Again, now we have our other word of the day, which is Psalter.
Which is new to us.
Yeah, it's very new to us. Psalter also comes from the Greek, and it's from the term psalterion, which is a stringed instrument from ancient Greece. So in this case, the string instruments mentioned here for both the words psalm and psalter are used for the title of what we know as the Psalms. So the reason the instruments are mentioned is because to play these songs, instruments such as the harp, the lyre, and the lute would be used, hence all the mention of the string instruments. So it's similar to getting more teachy. The books of the Bible, of course, they were written, we discussed it last time, Hebrew/Aramaic and Greek. And typically, because all these people are translating, right? Because they weren't there, so all of them are translating. The books of the Bible are named typically from the first word in the first sentence of that particular book. So I'm gonna get real nerdy right now. So Genesis, right? The book of Genesis starts with in the beginning. Genesis means the beginning. The Hebrew word for beginning is Bereshit, and that is also like one of the first words of the first sentence in Genesis, which is in the beginning. So it's actually not that complicated when you think about it.
Right. They just took the first word or words and made that the title, basically.
Yeah, they're like, oh, this is like Chronicles, for example, right? That's what the book does. It chronicles things.
It chronicles events.
Yeah, like the book of Numbers, it counts tribes. It's
The
about
kings.
numbers.
It's talking about the kings.
Yes, yes. So they made it real simple for us now that we look back in retrospect. But that's kind of what they did here. They're like, okay, well, to sing all of these songs that are known as psalms, they use these types of stringed instruments. So let's just name it after a stringed instrument. Yeah. So if Yadi and I had a book, and or no, if we wrote a song, if we had an album, let's be cool. If we had an album, if we had a Misfit album,
Yeah.
it would be pop, just because to
Why
make it
not?
funny.
Yeah.
And in one of our songs, like the first instrument you hear is a cello. The song would be called Cello.
Yeah. And you'd be like, what's the song? It has a cello in it. So that's why we called it cello.
Did you hear the cello in the beginning? Yes. Well, that's the name of the song.
Yeah. Do you understand now why it's named cello? Like, it would be pretty straightforward.
They made it real simple. Yeah. And you're like, all right. But yeah, that was a very convoluted explanation as to why they did this. So now you may be asking, Fran, what is the difference between the Psalms and the Psalter? Because that is the question on everyone's mind. That was the question on my mind.
That was ours. So if it wasn't on yours, it is now.
Yes, it is now. It's like, what is the difference? Why are you adding new words? So
Yeah.
we're gonna read you the answer to that question from an article we found written by the Seattle Pacific University. They explain it way better than we do, so we're gonna quote it. So it says, the word Psalter refers to all 150 canonical psalms. The psalms do not come to us as a series of individual units. Instead, each is part of a larger whole, a psalter. Granted, the psalms are highly personal but are not individualistic. Thus, each psalm is to be read in light of the other psalms, as well as in the light of the rest of the biblical canon. So, now what we know is that a psalm is just one psalm, like one song, S-O-N-G. This sounds like a word, like a riddle. But like Psalm 1 would be a psalm. Now, the entire Psalms together would be a Psalter.
So the whole book of Psalms, you can call it a Psalter. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a complicated math problem.
It's really not.
Why do we do this to ourselves?
I guess you could just, like, if you're talking about the as a whole, you don't have to say the book of Psalms. You can say the Psalter. But only we would understand what you're saying. But just know that you can, I guess.
Yeah. You know what a good example of that is? So a good example of the individual psalm versus the entire book of Psalms being a Psalter is Matthew through Revelation. They are all individual books, but together they make up the New Testament.
Okay, that's a good way to put it.
Genius. Thank you, Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
I was like, man, how do we break this down? Yeah. And it's cool because I don't think I knew, similar to Proverbs, I was like, oh, all of these Psalms are like individual, like they're individual songs.
Yeah.
And then these people are telling me that they all work together. I was like, ooh, I have not put that together yet. I need to work on my psaltering.
Yeah, I need to look into the Psalter of it all.
Yeah. Oh, man. We're going to sound so smart now, being like,
I know.
Oh, yeah, the book of Psalms. Oh, do you mean the Psalter?
Yeah.
Because it's not the book of Psalms.
So you can share that now, you know, in your next Bible study or when you're talking to someone and they're just talking about, oh, I love the book of Psalms. Like the Psalter, or do you have a specific one?
Exactly. Oh, yo, that would be such a good nerdy question.
And they just look at you like, what are you saying? Be like, oh, like my favorite is 91. But like, do you just love the Psalter?
Yeah, like
in
inside
general?
the Psalter, which one do you like the best? They're like,
Yeah,
what are
which
you
is the
talking
psalm in the
about?
Psalter that you like?
Yeah, that would be awesome.
So you can throw that. You can throw that, you know, in the chat if you'd
Man,
like.
that's dope.
Because now you learned something.
That's so cool. I love that.
So there you
Yeah.
go, you know? And that was the rabbit hole.
That was the rabbit hole we were talking about. Precisely.
So I'm glad we got that cleared up. Now you know the difference between these two, and you can use it, you know, just nonchalantly, you know, just throw it in.
Use it for
It's
good,
great.
not for evil.
Yeah, use it for good, but, you know, pay it forward, if you will. You know, we did the, you know, the work here. Really, Fran did. She went down this rabbit hole. So, you know, use it for good. Share it with your people.
Yeah, tell your friends and then tell them to listen to the episode.
Yeah, bring them back to this if they're a little confused. Like, oh, I got an episode for you. It's all good. But yeah, so we're going to keep it going though. So the traditional Hebrew title for what we now know as the Psalter is Tehillim. It means praises. And even though many of the Psalms are tefillot, meaning prayers. So in fact, one of the first collections included in the book was titled The Prayers of David, son of Jesse, which we know that he wrote some of these.
Yeah, and that's another distinction, right? Like, just thinking that they were all songs.
Yes.
It's like, oh, wait, there's prayers in there too? I was like, which ones? Can I pray them?
Right. I think you can.
Oh, you definitely can. Search my heart, O Lord, and find anything wicked in me.
Yeah. That can definitely be a song. But yeah, so there you go. The Psalter, like we've mentioned, is the collection of the 105 poems, songs, or prayers, and they're all from different periods in Israel's history. So we're going to break it down. 73 are connected to King David, so we know that he wrote them or was connected to them. 12 are from Asaph, which was another leader. 11 are from the sons of Korah. 3 were written by Solomon and Moses. 2 are from other worship leaders, and then there are 49 which are anonymous. And then super interesting to note, according to Jewish traditions, some of the Psalms are also attributed to Adam, Melchizedek, and even Abraham.
That was mind-blowing. I was like, what?
There's just a mixture of just so many people who attributed to these Psalms, which is really great because it just spans like a lot of biblical history to know that they're still connected in some way, but like different people, wrote psalms and songs and prayers. Yeah.
It's crazy. Like to think that one of them was like maybe Adam is like, I'm sorry, what? Which one?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, did you pass this down? Like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. What was he feeling? We don't know much about him after a certain time. It's like, what happened? Yeah.
Yeah. So that there's, something that Adam was feeling or sharing with his ancestors or the people after him is pretty cool. And then for some more history, we found that after Israel's exile to Babylon, these were gathered to make what we now know as the Book of Psalm or Psalter, now that we know that word. So although the book in its entirety is not a hymn book, some might think it is, it's not. But, it is a collection of all these poems, songs, and prayers. So what is the Psalter about and what do the Psalms teach us? So there's 3 things that we, took away from our research here and our studying this. 1, they teach us to not ignore our pain and to not let it determine our lives. I know that I've read many a Psalms where it's very relevant to what I'm going through. And it's not trying to minimize pain that we suffer as humans, right? Like it takes us through that. And I think the beautiful thing is that it's being real and it faces those things, those emotions, with still like putting our hope in God, right? Like it's teaching us to like not let that pain basically like take over our lives.
Definitely.
2, that God will fulfill his promises from the Torah and that he'll send the Messiah. So throughout the Psalms, again, like we see that time and time again. And then 3, it also teaches us about the lament, praise, faith, and hope of God's people. So again, like all these different things, like we as humans have been dealing with all of this since the beginning of time. And so I think Psalms is just a great representation of, people going through all these different things that we can then also pray and use these Psalms to use in our lives.
Yeah, it's great. We do see like this range of emotion. We see that we shouldn't hide our emotions from God. We see that it's okay to have emotions. We see that it's okay to share them with him. And I think that the misconception of the Psalms only being songs.
Yes.
People take them as like, I don't know, like inspo mostly, but also knowing that like really every single part of the Bible can be used as a prayer. Like you can just pray the words of God.
Yes.
And use them when you don't have your own, I remember, or even when you do have your own, but I remember I was reading this book and it was this book on waiting. And I think it's called Just You Wait, if I'm not mistaken. If that's it.
I'm actually reading that right now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we'll tag it in the description. It's one of the best books I've ever read in my life. It felt like a hug. It was amazing.
Yeah. It's made me cry in the best way.
Yeah. This woman who wrote it at the time, because she's taking you through her story, through grief, and she had lost her husband.
Yeah.
and she was writing a book, and she was like trying to raise her kids and all this stuff. Like she's just going through a ton of stuff. And I remember there was a part where she was like working on a book, and she was a writer, and she was at a coffee shop, and she's like just working on her computer, and she's like trying to do her Devo and all this other stuff. And she's like, man, when I didn't have words I prayed through the Bible. Like I would just find something that resonated with me. And I think she does mention the Psalms and just those passages that are just so gut wrenching, especially with what everything David went through.
Yeah.
And she just prayed those because she didn't have her own words. And I just, man, that was beautiful. It's like, we talked about this like in our previous episode. It's like, there's people that have gone before you, like everybody in the Bible, and they've been through all of these things, and we can use the words that they used and learn from their mistakes. And hey, how did David pray to God when he lost that one child that died, you know?
Yeah.
And use his words to pray. And once you have your strength back and you can pray your own, then you can do that too. But man, I don't know, what a beautiful gift that God has given us to just give us this book that we can use as a tool, that we can lean on, that we can learn from, that we can
relate to.
Man, yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's outrageous really that we have this, I don't know, this collection of God's thoughts.
Yes.
And other Christians, or not Christians, but like followers of Yahweh and then followers of Jesus that came before us, that just like, it just makes everything so much easier for us.
Yeah.
Because we have that, you know, and they didn't.
Right.
We have a leg up, people.
Yeah, and I think the beautiful thing too, if you don't know, like so many of the Psalms also have like the promises of God. So like when you hear about the promises of God, you're like, where is that? So many of them are in Psalms. And so there's so much promise in you reading the Psalms. You find so much comfort in like reading the Psalms, because so much of it comes from like just God being there for you. Like he says, you know, delight in me and I will give you the desires of your heart. Like that's a promise. Like he's telling you delight in him and he will give you the desires of your heart. Now that there's a lot more to that, because delighting in him requires, you know, a sacrifice from us and requires work from us. But like, to me, I think that's beautiful. Like, I can't believe I get to do that. I get to delight in him, and then he sees me, you know, and he answers my prayer. He sees what's in my heart, which if I'm delighting in him, it's him, right? It's like what he wants from me. So I just think, you know, I don't think sometimes we realize how many promises and how many things that God is speaking to us through the Psalms, because sometimes we, like you said, like, oh, it's a song, you know, like it's nice. It's a prayer that David did. It's like, yeah, but there's so much more. There's so much more there. If you're short on words, or sometimes you're not really sure what to read, like I think that's one of the main reasons why we talk about like go to the Psalms as one of the places to go, because it really will like speak to you on whatever you might have gone through or what you are going through.
Yeah. It's like blatant chronicles of humanity in the Psalms.
Yeah.
It's just these beautiful, beautiful, sad, terrible.
Yeah, but real. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just so raw and so honest, whether it's good and it's worship or it's bad and the person is devastated. Mm-hmm. It just shows you how this person was dealing with things at the time. And it leads you usually to how they bounce back.
Yeah.
And the fact that how they talk to God shows you what they thought of God, and that he was almighty. Yes, he is listening. And another suggestion to go through the Psalms, like you can go through just the entire book of the Psalter, or you could also, and you can do this on the Bible app. You don't have to buy it, but there's a chronological Bible, and we can link it for you as well. But essentially what happens is it gives you all the text like chronological, and it gives you the Psalms exactly when they were written.
Yeah.
So it'll tell you something about David's life, and then it'll have the psalm that David wrote during that time. And it's so cool. Like, it's so mind-blowing. The commentary does that too. You just have to put in a lot more legwork.
Yeah.
But the chronological Bible is like the next page over.
Yes.
So you can do that. There's like a chronological Bible plan in the Bible app where you could just see that Bible for free, or you could just purchase it, do the Kindle version or whatever.
But that's a good one. So if you want to kind of read it in order how it was written, or the timeline of it, you can also do that. And yeah, like if you want to keep digging or want to know a little bit more, you know, like Fran said earlier, like we did do an episode of the Hallel Psalms, and we discussed those Psalms a little more in depth. So if you want to learn a little bit more about those specifically, we do have an episode which we'll link. But yeah, those were the ones that were sung by Jesus, you know, before his crucifixion. So we wanted to talk about those specifically before we even did the Psalm episode. But yeah, if you're interested in like maybe specifics on that, we do have an episode on that. But yeah, we just totally encourage you to, you know, get into the Psalms if you haven't, or just look at them a little differently. Don't feel like, oh, they're just songs, or they're just, you know, oh, David wrote this. Like, no, there's just so much that God has that can speak to us. Of course, the whole Bible, but I think the Psalms are like something you can incorporate a little bit easier and just let it speak to you.
Yeah, and feel empowered to use them as your own words. You can say them in first person, and it's a really good way to know people like David or Asaph, and know what they were thinking or what they were going through, and just kind of dig deeper into who that person was, because these were actual people. And sometimes we forget when we read the Bible that because we read pages and chapters back to back to back, that like years passed and decades, and like these people actually had lives and had wives and children and died and deaths and tears, and like they went through everything we went through to a certain extent, because we have kind of cushy lives.
But I think the human emotions are still there.
The human emotions are still the same.
We still go through, anger and sadness and, loss and all that. And, the Psalms talk about that, so.
Exactly. Yeah. So we hope that you enjoyed this episode. We hope that you found as much joy in knowing the difference between the Psalm and the Psalter as we did.
Yeah.
And that you know some more information that, I don't know, it helps you love the Bible more, helps you want to dig into it more, helps you understand it a little bit better, maybe a little bit better than you did yesterday. And that's our whole goal. And so yeah, we hope that you enjoyed this episode. And before we close, I wanted Yadi to share a story that she heard from someone that was just impacted by the podcast, because we just want you to know that whenever someone listens to the podcast, or they ask us about it, or they tell us that they listened to an episode, or you're supporting us in any way, like it makes a huge difference, because what we do is not easy. This is not a full-time job. This is like an additional thing that we do to everything else in our lives, and it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort,
right?
It takes a lot of it's a huge commitment that we've accepted that God gave us. And there's been many a time when we're like, man, should we keep doing this? Should we not?
Right.
We're going on 3 years now. And every time someone gives us an encouraging word, or they said they listened, or they saw our Instagram or our Facebook or whatever, it really does help. So I just wanted her to share that.
Yeah, so I was just sharing with Fran earlier, but a few weeks ago, maybe like 2-3 weeks ago, there was a young lady I met at a graduation party, and she came up to me and she's like, hey, you're the one from Midtown Misfits, which was very random because that's not something that happens normally. But she shared with me that she was, she's a young adult, and so she was looking for more community, and she went on Instagram kind of trying to see, what was out there, I guess, and she actually found our podcast page, and through our podcast page, she was able to kind of see like who we were connected to, and she saw that North Rock Church was connected to us, and then she was able to connect with people from North Rock, and then kind of started attending and getting involved with the young adults group there. But yeah, it started because she saw our page and saw our content and was like, oh wow, like that's pretty cool, and then was able to then connect to North Rock Church, which is a church that I still attend since Fran now moved. but yeah, so she was, she shared this with me, which, is just a testament to like, you think like what changes it doing, or how does it impact? And she's heard the podcast, and she was able to, through our page, then connect to, a local church and then find community, which I think is really awesome.
Yeah, it's incredible, because we don't want to be your final destination. We want to be a stepping stone to get you closer to your relationship with God, to understanding Him better, to understanding the Bible better. We want you to, like we've said, this episode, previous episodes, we want you to learn from us and from our mistakes, so that you don't have to we want our lives to be your shortcut.
Yeah. Like learn from stuff that we've shared. Yeah.
Like, don't be us, be better than us. Yeah. And like through the things that we're learning, because these are things like we are deep into our walk with Jesus, Yadi more than I am. However, all of the things that I know now, you can learn them easier. You can learn them faster, because we want to share them with you.
Yeah. We've had some lessons that we've learned like the hard way, and not everyone should have to do that. So, but yeah, it is encouraging when we hear stories like this.
Yeah. So we just wanted to share that. It's incredible. We appreciate it. We've had just comments on our YouTube and on our Instagram, and people just reaching out and just saying something that they might not think it's a big deal. Man, it is a big deal. It's a huge deal, and it helps us.
Just know it means a lot to us.
It means a ton, and it helps us to keep going. And we thank God for sending her, and we thank her for coming and saying it, and having the boldness to do that. And that's what we wanted to close with. So we hope that you enjoyed this episode. We thank you for your support. We thank you for just being here and riding along with us.
And if you have a story of how you found us, like, feel free, to reach out. let us know.
You can email it, text it,
Instagram, anything.
comment it, DM it.
Review us on, Apple or Spotify. Yeah, we'd love to hear from y'all. That encourages us to keep going.
Yeah. Also, shout out to, we have like a ton of people that are listening to us from like different countries. We have like people in Russia and in Germany and in like Singapore and like all of these places. If you are from any of those countries that I mentioned, or just from somewhere that's in the United States, please reach out.
Yeah.
But outside of the United States also, let us know, because we would love to know where you're listening from and how you even found us.
Yeah, how did you find us?
We would love to know. Yeah, appreciate you. The people that have been following us since day one and the people that started following us yesterday, we appreciate every single one of you. Thank you so much. This sounds like a farewell tour, but no, we'll be back next week. This is Fran.
This is Yadi.
And we will be back next week with the Midtown Misfits. Bye.
Bye.